Welcome to the Dojo Talk Podcast. Please remove them shoes before entry.
Sam Master is here, and you still have not taken off your shoes.
Yeah. Living every day to define man's mission. Look into the sky for divine transmission. Deaf man's vision makes the blind man listen. Eyes on the prize, this is blind ambition. Thank you.
Yo, what's going on, people? Welcome to another edition of the Dojo Talk Podcast. I am your host, Serial Sensei, and we are on episode number 43. This is actually a re-record. So I originally recorded this podcast that I'm about to do right now that you guys are about to listen to about 2 days ago. And in the middle of me recording, my software shut down. I did not get a chance to save my session, so I lost everything. I got angry. I didn't re-record it that day. I was like, whatever. I quit. I give up for the day. But here we are. We're back. I'm back re-recording. It all worked out, though. So by the time you guys hear this podcast, I've already recorded a podcast with my co-host, Anti-Cool. Of course, we cover, all the MMA fights, combat sports, things of that nature. So we just went over the Stefan Struve and Alexander Volkov card that happened this weekend. So by the time you hear this podcast, that episode is already recorded. So I'll probably put that out maybe Wednesday, Thursday. And then, of course, we got UFC 215 coming up this weekend. So definitely have a episode for that. And I got some other projects in the works that I'll be recording. So as always, content is coming on SoundCloud, on Google Play, on YouTube. Still trying to get on iTunes. Still not on there yet. Nobody's hit me back. I've submitted my podcast like a month ago, but it is what it is. If you're listening, maybe go yell at iTunes on Twitter or something. Tell them to put me on iTunes, man. I've been patiently waiting to get on there, but for now, it is what it is. So I guess I will just jump into it. So today I'm gonna cover a movie and 2 album reviews. Well, 1 album and one's actually more of a EP. So we're gonna do the movie review first, so I can kind of just get this out the way. Oh man, so I'm a glutton for punishment, and I watch movies that I know are going to be terrible, and I watch them because I think every movie deserves its fair shot. Everybody deserves their little 15 minutes, and they deserve to be judged accordingly. But at least that's a rule I try to operate by. The thing is, that rule isn't true. Not everybody deserves a shot. And I should have known that this movie was a setup, especially considering I watched Ghost in the Shell earlier. Not that, those 2 films are really related other than they're both animes, but we know how this story goes. Great anime, classic anime gets a live action make, and the live action 9 times out of 10 is normally terrible. I watched Ghost in the Shell earlier this year, one of the most boring movies I think I've watched in a long time. And then Death Note comes along, and I watched the first initial trailer, and I was like, I probably shouldn't watch this movie. It looks whack. It looks like everything I thought it would be, just mediocrity at its finest. But as always, my curiosity gets the best of me, and I gave this a shot, and yeah. So Death Note came out August 25th of this year on Netflix. So if you haven't seen it yet, to be honest, I'd probably tell you to just sit this one out. But I mean, if you're curious to watch it, it is on Netflix. Came out August 25th. The film is 1 hour and 41 minutes long. So if you want to waste 1 hour and 40 minutes of your life, like I did, hey man, be my guest. But don't say I didn't warn you or let you know what you're about to get into. Disclaimer: I am going to spoil this entire movie. a second disclaimer, me spoiling this movie doesn't do anything for you. You're not missing out on anything, to be honest. The only kind of surprise is that the ending to this movie is different than the anime, which surprisingly is one of the few things I liked about this movie, but I will get into that part later. But yeah, so Death Note was directed by Adam Wingard, and it stars people such as Nat Wolff, who played Light Turner. Yes, Light Turner, not Light Yagami. His name is Light Turner, whatever. Lakeith Stanfield, who played L, and Margaret Qualley, if I'm saying that right, who played Mia, and Willem Dafoe, who played Ryuk. I'm not really going to get into anybody else in this movie, because to be honest, half of the other people in this movie were not all that important. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this. I mean, if you watch Death Note, you know the story. For anyone, if you've never watched Death Note or don't know what the anime is about, basically the Death Note is a book, kind of just falls from the sky, and in the Death Note, if you write someone's name, they will die, and you can write how they die, when they die, I think up to a certain amount of time. The book does have sets of rules, which they do like briefly go over in the movie. I feel like in the anime they probably covered it, covered that a lot more, but either way, the book has rules and, you know, regulations, so on and so forth. But the main point is you write somebody's name in the book and they will die. So the book, or in the anime, the book falls into the hands of Light Yagami, who is pretty much a well-to-do citizen, a model student, a very intelligent person. And in the anime, it's a real battle of wit of the cops and L trying to catch him and trying to prove that it is him. They have suspicions, but they can't prove anything. And in the anime, Light, he's always covering his tracks. It always seems like he's 10 steps ahead of everybody. The anime did a really, really good job of building tension and suspense and things like that. But I guess let me stop talking about the anime. Let me focus on this movie. So in the movie, you got part of the story right. The book does fall from the sky. Now in the movie and Death Note, they made it to where Ryuk kind of chose Light. I believe in the anime he didn't really choose Light. He actually dropped the book by mistake. But either or, small thing they changed, but whatever. So in the movie he chooses Light to get the Death Note. I don't know where to start. I knew this movie was going to be a train wreck pretty much from the beginning, man. Like the opening scene, we see Light in like the schoolyard, and you know people are doing whatever in the schoolyard. And like Light is hustling homework, like people are paying him to do homework, and he does this little transaction where like they hand him money and he hands them a paper and stuff like that. It's weird. I don't know. I guess it is what it is. And the introduction music was killing me too. I can't remember the name of the song, but I don't know. Like the whole opening scene was just kind of weird. And then yeah, he gets the Death Note or whatever, and the scene where he's like in detention. Oh god, I gotta get to that part. Oh god, so Light gets into detention, trying to play superhero basically, so he can get the girl, so to speak. So Mia, who was Misa in the anime, they literally just took one letter out of her name for whatever reason, but whatever. She's like getting picked on by these two guys or whatever, and then Light sees it and he tries to step in and he tries to be witty and make jokes, but the jokes just fall terribly flat. And for all of his troubles, he catches a hook to the face and pretty much gets KO'd in the beginning of the movie. And then like he wakes up, and I think the very next scene, like he was just in detention, I think. I can't remember. Like this movie was edited really bad. It was really jumpy the way they like transitioned from scene to scene. That was just something I noticed a lot while I was watching it. But anywho, he ends up in detention or whatever, and Mia got him put in detention. I forgot how that was even explained, but she got him put in detention, and he's in detention with the teacher. The teacher steps out of the classroom for a second, and he's basically in there by himself. So he pulls out the Death Note. He's reading it or whatever, and then storm comes. Things start getting dark, and then he meets Ryuk for the first time. And Ryuk is pretty much like a demon, and only the user of the Death Note can see him. So, or with an anime, if you touch the book, you can see him. But in the movie, like only Light can see him in the movie. And Ryuk shows up, and like Light lets out like this fourth grader scream. Oh, it was hilariously bad. But he lets out this scream, and he basically just runs all over the place. He's trying to get out of detention. The door is locked, and he's panicking. He hides under the desk like that's going to do something. The desk ends up getting torn from above him. One thing they did, I guess, that was cool, like the anime, Ryuk and his fascination with apples. Ryuk did body a few apples in this movie. But Ryuk, who was played by Willem Dafoe, Willem Dafoe actually did do a really good job, I will say, of playing Ryuk. He probably was one of the few, if not only, bright spot in this entire film. He had that really dark sense of humor, really witty, just creepy but funny at the same time. Always in Light's ear, telling him, hey, you should put that kid's name in the book, and laughing at Light when things go wrong or when people start to catch on to him. So Willem Dafoe did a really, really awesome job of playing Ryuk. That might be the only good thing I can say about this movie. The first scene, when the first death happened, I read reviews before this movie came out, which normally I don't do, but I did it because I didn't care. Like, I knew this was going to be bad, so I didn't care that anybody spoiled anything from me. And I saw people who thought the deaths were cool. I thought all of these were they were all really cool. Most of them, aside from the one scene where everybody jumped off the roof, maybe even that wasn't that great, but most of these scenes I just thought were extremely corny. They were really over the top. They reminded me a lot of the Final Destination movies, and not I thought the first maybe 2 Final Destinations were okay, but after a while those movies got really redundant, and it just seemed like they were just pulling up crazy ways. So just, I don't know. Like the first death scene in the movie, Ryuk convinces Light to write this guy's name in the Death Note because he's picking on this chick from outside the window and they can see it. And so he writes his name in the Death Note, and then he writes by decapitation, and then they pretty much watch as this kid's death plays out, and the kid ends up getting hit, some kind of car accident thing happened, and a ladder flew, and the ladder split the kid's head in half. I don't know, man. It was really bizarre and just over the top. And from there, man, the story it was frustrating because I feel like this movie, despite all of the casting mistakes they made, this movie could have been halfway decent, but they just did all of the little stuff was just wrong. They rushed the story. There was no build up or tension. After he got the Death Note, things just started happening way too fast. They didn't really give you time to take anything in. It was just let's go. And then you get the love interest between him and Mia, and Mia I hated her in this movie. I didn't really like her character much in the anime, but God, in the movie she was even worse. She basically ends up trying to bully Light around to get him to do what she wants and how she thinks the book should be used. But all of their plans are just terrible. Oh man, the one scene, I have to mention this. So everybody knows in the anime, Light's alias was Kira. So they also do that in the movie. He does go by Kira. But the way they explain this is my... So Light and Mia are sitting on his bed. They're like a couple, a quote unquote couple. She's pretty much using them the way I see it. But anywho, they're like a couple. He's explaining to her why he chose the name Kira. So his logic is as follows, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is pretty much what he said. So apparently, he said Kira means the light in like Russian or something like that. It means like the light in Russian, but in Japan it means killer or something of that nature. And then he looks at her with a straight face and says, if I go by the name Kira, they won't know where to look for me because Kira is Japanese, and therefore they'll be looking in another country. At that point, I knew this movie was going to be bad from the beginning, but at that just solidified it. At that point, I was like, boy, oh boy. I literally laughed at that part. Like, that logic was so terrible, but he said it with such conviction and a straight face that I was like, you really think you're a genius? Like, and that's one of the many things wrong with this movie. Like, one of the best things about the anime that made it so good was that Light was so smart. And what sucked in this movie is that there are times in the movie where they mention that Light is smart and that he's a really bright kid, but they don't show you at all. Like, they never show you his brightness. Maybe one scene, which I'll get to at the end, but this just throughout the movie, him and Mia just... There's a scene where kind of after Light's been using the Death Note for a while, and you know, the cops are starting to catch on, and some people view him as a hero, but the cops aren't really too fond of him because they don't think he should be the judge and executioner, albeit he is killing criminals who don't seem to get caught, like high-ranking politicians, people in the military who aren't doing things they should be doing. So he's taking out, in a way, I guess he's taking out people who kind of got what's coming to him, but you know, of course the police don't feel like he should be the one who'd make that decision or whatever. But there's a scene where Light's dad, who was very underused in this movie, also badly casted because he was awesome in the anime, not so much in this movie. But there's a scene where Light's dad is having this press conference, and he's pretty much saying directly to the camera with his face and everything out there, like, listen, we don't know who you are, but we're not stopping until we get you. We're not going to bow down, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Basically tell them, like, listen, man, we're out to get you. Like, it's not a game. and Mia just grabs the Death Note, and she's like, you need to kill your dad. Like, no, you can't. I get it. Him and his dad don't have, like, the best relationship, but you can't. That's not a plan. For one, you're trying not to get caught. I mean, if at that point, if you kill the dad, they're probably going to be on to you. Not even that. Like, this is supposed to be your quote-unquote boyfriend, and you just, without hesitation, you just want to kill his pops. Like, off of impulse. Just, you got to off your pops. Like, no. Just, no. Oh, my God. And then we get L. He shows up. He's played by, is it Lakeith Stanfield? I wasn't too high on L in the trailer. He was decent in the movie. I guess I appreciate a little bit that he had some of L's like quirkiness, and he also had it kind of similar to L in the anime, where L was always munching on these snacks or always something sweet pretty much. So he had that going for him, but even L in this movie wasn't, like, I feel, as smart or as witty as he was in the anime. And they also, a major point in this movie that they really just glossed over, they never really explained how they found out that Kira was Light. Like, literally, L just walked into a room with Light's dad and was like, hey, your son is Kira. And we just have to accept that. Like, nobody, like, there was no explanation. They kind of glossed over it to where there was, like, they explained how only, well, I guess by process of elimination, you can tell that by some of the people that Light had killed, that he has access to information that not your average person would have access to. So by process of elimination, they just kind of figured out, well, hey, your son does have access to this, so it might be him. But like, they just really glossed over it. Just quick mention, you know, which I feel like that was some major point in the film. Like, everybody's trying to find out who this killer is, and then you guys find out, but you don't make it like a big deal. You just kind of like, oh hey, yeah, your son's a killer. And it's like, eh. Like, oh man, like just the acting in this movie, the story was rushed beyond belief. Really weren't any just good setups, no good build-ups. There was no tension. Mia and Elle were just terrible together. The music in this movie killed me too. Like, there were so many scenes where like something really serious was about to happen. Notably, I'll skip all the way to the end of the movie, where Elle and Mia are on the Ferris wheel, and the Ferris wheel starts to break. And like they're playing like this really light-hearted song, and like Mia is about to fall off of this really tall Ferris wheel and guaranteed death if she hits the floor, which luckily she did die. That was one of the parts of the movie I liked because I hated her character. So, but I don't know, man. This movie was just not good, man. Really rushed story. No type of really character development. The only good thing, like I said, in this movie, well, aside from Ryuk, the one bright moment that Elle had was at the very end, where he decided basically to kind of kill Mia, which I thought it was cool how he did it, because this was the only scene, and a few scenes after that, where it somewhat reminded me of the light in the show. Like, that was the one moment where you could tell he was thinking not just for the moment, but he was thinking ahead, where he had it set up to where Mia would die if she took the book, and she took the book, so she died. And then he wrote someone else's name who, really, they both fell from the Ferris wheel. So he foreshadowed that they both would fall. He wrote in the death note that Mia would die. He also wrote that a certain person would revive him after he fell, and then someone else would go retrieve the book for him while he was in the hospital. So it was dope to see that was the one moment where I was like, okay, he's actually thinking ahead, and he's plotting for the future. And while it was different in the anime, obviously in the anime they killed him, but I didn't mind that ending. It was a nice setup, I thought. One of the few bright moments that he have, and if they decide, well, I'm pretty sure they're probably going to do a sequel, sadly, but yeah, like the setup for that I thought was pretty cool. So if they do a second one, I guess it's set up pretty decent, even though at this point they know it's him. And I guess last side note, he doesn't really do a good job of being, secretive. I feel like they find him pretty easily. So I feel like in the second movie, I don't get how they're gonna drag this out, because it's not, everybody knows who he is now, and he's definitely not the smartest tool in the shed, as you guys will see if you watch it. But I don't know, man. Like, this movie just all around, the story was rushed, the editing was terrible, the music was bad, the characters weren't that great. Aside from Willem Dafoe as Ryuk, the acting in this movie was very, very mediocre. Yeah, this. Whew. If you're a fan of Death Note, the manga or the anime, you'll probably feel really disrespected after you watch this. But I've seen some people who like it. Most of those people haven't watched the anime, so take for that what it's worth. I don't know. But to me, even as a standalone film, I don't, like, even if you didn't reference the anime, I still don't see how this is really that great of a movie. As of right now on IMDb, it's hovering at a 4.7 out of 10. I think that's generous. I probably would have gave this a 2. 1 point for Willem Dafoe as Ryuk. Maybe another point for Elle, who was just kind of passable if you compare him to everybody else in the film, and that's even being generous. So really, I would give him like a 0.5, but whatever. Well, I'll round up to a 2. But I don't know, man. Death Note goes on the long list of anime movies and like video game movies that get turned into live action films. Directors, for whatever reason, choose to just like disregard the source material. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't understand how we're still having this problem in 2017 after so many failed attempts. You would think a director would finally just say, you know what, all of these other anime movies didn't pay attention to their source material, so maybe I should look at mine. maybe I should draw from it. And I get it. Not every anime will perfectly translate, and especially an anime like Death Note, where probably would have done better as a TV series and not a movie, because that's a lot to squeeze in a little over an hour. But still, man, like, I don't know. But hey, man, if you want to watch Death Note, if you want to waste an hour and 40 minutes of your life like I did, be my guest. Just don't say I didn't warn you. Don't get your hopes up. You might be mildly entertained in a bad way, like I was. Like, I found myself laughing at how bad the movie was. But overall, yeah, this is not a good watch, man. Not a good watch at all. But props to Lakeith Stanfield, though. I'm seeing his face pop up more and more. And like I said, he was decent in this movie. And I think it, even from what I've seen, from the little I've seen from him, I feel like he's a guy who could probably break through in other movies. Like, I don't think he's a bad actor. I can't just hold this one movie against him. And even this one movie where I didn't think he was that great, he still stood out better than pretty much everyone else. So for what that's worth, I'm glad he's getting some hype, and hopefully he'll be in some better films in the future. I guess if they do a part 2, he'll end up returning, but it is what it is, man. Another anime movie just tossed in the dirt. But yeah, man, that's all I got to say about Death Note. So watch it, but be warned, you're probably going to be disappointed. But on to things that aren't disappointing, things that are pretty enjoyable, and things that do not make me angry. Let's get into some music. First album on deck, Marlon Craft, The Tunnel's End. This is the second time I'm reviewing a Marlon Craft project. I reviewed He Looks Like Nothing. I think I reviewed that earlier this year, even though it came out last year. But I thought that was a solid tape. I think there was room for improvement for Marlon Craft to make, but it was definitely still a solid effort nonetheless. If you don't know who Marlon Craft is, he's from NYC. He's gotten a lot of buzz on the internet for a lot of his freestyle videos. He had the NBA freestyle where he referenced like every team in one freestyle. I've seen him a couple times, I think, on Team Backpack's Facebook page. So he's gotten a lot of hype on the internet, and well deserved, man. The dude is definitely a good lyricist, and he's been putting in the work, and it shows. The Tunnel's End, I believe this is a pretty good step up from what I've heard from his previous projects. Production, I think, has gotten better for him. His songwriting, I think, has gotten better. Hooks, concepts. I think he's making the improvements that you want to see a newer artist make. That, gives you hope that maybe they could be, something special, or just someone that will stay around in this game for a while and won't be one of those MCs or artists that, you hear from them for maybe one or two projects and then they just kind of fade to black. Like he seems like if he stays on the trajectory that he's at now, he'll definitely have some staying power. The Tunnel's End, it's not like a concept album, but I think it does have some underlying themes that to me are just kind of tied to the album title. I feel like in this album, the tunnel kind of represents kind of like, I guess, and by our I mean like everybody, our like collective journey and where we're going, and we're on this train in this tunnel, and the tunnel's just the train's not headed anywhere good, so to speak, and we all could, I guess, change the path of the train and find a better out, but we're all just kind of caught up in our own little worlds that we're not focusing on. We're not as aware as we should be, pretty much. And I think that's a theme that kind of runs throughout this album. I can't even really say subtly, but it's a theme that at least I picked up on that I think runs throughout this album. Like I said, content-wise, man, you'll get songs about kind of just an everyday life of an everyday dude who's just kind of out here just trying to make it. He has a nice ode to my nerd people in the world. I'll get to that track later. Bars about social injustice, racism, police brutality, this internet culture that we're in today's age. Like that, he touches on a good array of topics, and he does it without coming off like too preachy, which I think some artists can fall in that trap of. They'll have good content, but their delivery is kind of like beating you over the head, and I think he does a good job of balancing good content without like trying to preach to you. He's just talking to you, like he's just trying to just let you know what it is, but he's not beating you over the head, I feel, with anything. Also, I think he did a good job with on this project, better than he did on the last one. He can do these songs with like messages and good content, but they're still aesthetically pleasing sound wise, so it doesn't it doesn't sound like corny, or it comes across really well. I think he did a really good job on that. So actually I'll just kind of jump into some of these tracks, some of my favorite cuts from this album. The intro, actually, track entitled The One, first track on the album. I love the production on this track. Those really like jazzy horns. It's a really like classy instrumental. It reminds me of like the beginning of like a James Bond movie. It has this really good, just classy feel to it. I thought it was a really good kickoff to the album. Production on this album actually was pretty varied, man. He gives you a few different looks. Like you get The One, which is like I said, a pretty like classy jazzy track. Then it goes into Bad Day Music, which completely flips the mood, and the track kind of sounds the way the song title does. This is probably one of my favorite tracks on here, of Marlon just pretty much describing the emotions of a bad day. But I love the verse where he's talking about him being on the train, and the dudes are grilling him on the train and talking loud like they're gonna do something. I just kind of found that pretty relatable. Like if you've ever rode public transportation, albeit a subway, a bus, or whatever, like you know those people are out there. People out there just kind of bumping at the gums on the train or on the bus, trying to start trouble, but they're probably not really gonna do anything. But they're just out there causing ruckus. So I really, really, really enjoyed Bad Day Music. That's a good track. The Feels is another good one off this album, and I appreciated this track because I think this one stood out to me from pretty much all of the other songs on the album. Just didn't sound like the rest of them. Like had this really slow, like dreary beat, but in contrast to like the dreary beat, Marlon had like this really, not like double time flow, but he definitely picked his speed up as far as his delivery was. So I thought that contrast actually worked out really well. So that was another favorite on here. Brainiacs, which I feel like that's the nerd anthem on this album pretty much. Kind of like an uplifting, and an ode to the nerds out in the world and people who get picked on for being into quote unquote nerdy things and stuff like that. And basically him saying, you might be ridiculed for being into, nerd culture, but like, hey man, you'll be good. Like don't let anybody deter you from what you're doing. Like just keep doing you. So I thought that was really dope. Another thing I'll mention actually before I keep going, one thing I think Marlon does well, aside from being a really good lyricist, he also has a really good, I think, like mic presence and like an overall just a good voice for rap. Like it's a really like confident, I don't know, like he's there, like he's very present on the mic, if that makes sense. Like he doesn't shy away from the beat. It's kind of hard to explain, but like I just think he has a really good cadence for hip hop. So that's another thing that makes his albums enjoyable. He has a really good mic presence about him. This album to me like starts off really, really, really good. Man, I actually need to bring up the entire track listing, but this album to me just started off like fire. So give me a quick second. I should have had this up already. But okay, so yeah, you start off with The One, which was a dope intro. Then you go to Bad Day Music. Then you go to The Fields. And also I'll mention, in between a lot of these tracks, you get these interludes, which kind of tie in the theme I was talking about of the tunnel and the train and that whole journey. Of a lot of the interludes is Marlon talking to this homeless guy on the train, and the homeless guy's explaining to him kind of like, how we're all on this train together, and nobody's willing to help anybody else because we're also stuck in what we're doing. But literally we could all change the course of this train if we just kind of bonded together. But they have like a few interesting exchanges. Really, I feel like the old guy was doing most of the talking, but so that kind of like ties the theme of the album in also. And then another really important track I think to me that ties the theme is actually, it's an interlude called The Closing Doors, and it's right before Brainiacs. I thought that interlude did a really good job of tying in the concept of kind of what this album is about. So yeah, you get tracks like 1 through 5 are really dope. Then you get the tracks number 6, New York Shit with Radamiz. Really just grimy. The instrumental sounds exactly like what the song title is. Like, this is straight hoodie and Timberland music. It's a really dope, just grimy street cut. Probably my favorite line on that track. Probably my favorite line on the album. I ain't the one to hold my tongue, I ain't at all bashful. They never call you on your bullshit like LeBron's travels. How you gonna free yourself if you don't see your own shackles? I ain't along for the ride, I'd rather carjack you. Like, that's straight New York. Just straight just griminess. I loved it. Also, shout outs to Radamiz, one of the few features on this album. He had a dope verse at the end. So yeah, man, that's a straight like just New York gritty hip hop track. Marco Made Me Do It. I don't have production notes in front of me. I think Marco Polo produced this, I'm gonna say. But yeah, this beat is nasty. Just a nice, this nasty, just head nodding beat. And I like how Marlon really flowed over this. And he has a really good like array of flows where like some of these tracks he can kind of slow it down. And then he has, like I said, on The Fields where he kind of ups the speed of his flow. And then you get to Marco Made Me Do It, where it kind of reminds me of like a Sky Zoo flow where he just kind of gets in a pocket and he just kind of goes in. So that's one of my favorite tracks on here. The Internet Lied is another good track. It's a really interesting track. Kind of talking about the kind of like the blessing and curse of this internet culture. I love the lines. Nowadays I sleep less because I'm up hitting refresh. We exposed them more than before, but yet we see less, which I thought was really dope and a very true line about how we get bombarded with so much content and so many content and just videos and everything on a daily. And it's like, how much are we really learning from this? Like, there's so much information, but we're not gravitating toward the information that really matters. But I thought that was a dope line. I also love the hook, how on one side he's kind of like showing the downfall of the internet, but then like in the hook he like shouts out SoundCloud because he's like, that's where you guys probably heard this song. So I thought that was dope. Like, it's a good showing of the double-edged sword of the internet. So that was a pretty good track. Going down the track listing, like I said, a few of these tracks switch it up. You get tracks like All I Need, which is kind of a slower track. I don't remember Find a Way that much, to be honest. And you get The Internet Lied, Invisible Man, and then the album ends with Unstoppable, which I think was a good closing track to this album, and kind of ties in, I think, the album pretty good about we could do a lot better pretty much if we all stood together, if we all banded together as one, and if everybody got on one accord, the world could be running a lot smoother than it is now. But So I thought that track was great. And shout out to Leah Rich, who is the other lone feature on this album. She was on Your Life and All I Need. I believe she's collaborated with him before. She does a pretty good job on her hooks. So yeah, man, like this album, it's not like an amazing project, but it's a really solid, really solid piece of work. I would say definitely if you're a fan of more of the underground sound, it has boom bap feel to it, but not like it doesn't sound like dated or old, or anything like that. Like, it's that New York East Coast sound, but it still sounds updated. It still sounds modern. So I think it's good in that effect. Like I said, man, you get a few different looks on this album. You get some head nodding joints. You get some tracks that are a bit slower. You get some more serious songs. You get a few uplifting joints on here. Like I said, as far as content, man, you get introspective. You get social, political, the music industry, the internet culture, racism. It covers a really good gamut of topics without the album, sounding like it's all over the place or anything. Like, it's really well put together. It's just a nice, solid album. And like I said, it's definitely a step up from He Looked Like Nothing. So I think Marlon's on a good trajectory. Like, I think from what I see, man, he's out here making moves and doing shows. So he's obviously his career, I think, is headed on a upside. So it'll be interesting to see how far he can go. I don't really have a lot bad to say. Like I said, it's not a great album. It's just a really solid, consistent album, I think. As far as something I would maybe like to see from him moving forward, I think he would do good. I'd be interested to see him over some different sounding production, because I think with the many different ways that he can flow and the way his delivery goes, like he has various ways of attacking songs. So I think I could hear him over a lot of different kinds of production. So I would like to see him experiment maybe with his sound more and branch out. I'm not even really sure what kind of sound, just something different. Like I think he could, not saying like go like a pop route or anything like that, but like I think he could fit over a good array of production. So I don't know, maybe in his next project I would look forward to seeing him expand his sound a bit more, maybe work with some different producers than maybe who he's working with currently, just to see, maybe if he can find another, a different sound, just something different he can bring to the table. Not that what he's doing now isn't working, but I think he could branch out a bit more. But I mean, other than that, man, it's a pretty solid piece of work, man. Definitely something worth checking out. Definitely worth the $9.99 on iTunes, or how much ever it costs. I know I bought it. I don't remember what I paid, but but yeah, man, it's a really good album. I'll definitely leave. Pretty sure like 2 of these tracks from this album have videos, so I'll probably leave those in the description below, so you guys can check those out, so you can kind of get a feel of what you'll be getting into when you listen to the album. But yeah, man, it's a really, really, really good piece of work. Definitely an MC to keep an eye on. Like I said, if you love that New York sound, you want lyricism, you want content, and you want that New York style production, but that still sounds modern, this will definitely be up your alley. So shout outs to Marlon Craft, man. He's out here putting in work, getting better with every project. So I definitely look forward to what he puts out next. And yeah, man, the tunnel's in. Give it a look, give it a listen, and I'm pretty sure you'll pull some songs away from that album that you'll definitely enjoy. So yeah, really, really dope project. And I guess now it's pretty much all I got to say about that album. Won't drag it out for forever. This next project we will get into. Last project I will be reviewing. Really short, but still a really good project. Fashawn is back with his Manna EP. As of late, Fashawn's been pretty active. He first kind of burst on the scene with Boy Meets World, I believe, was the album that he originally got like a lot of recognition for. And then We were all waiting for the Ecology, which seemed like it took forever to drop. That finally came out, and then he was kind of quiet for a while, but he came back on the scene. He had a project with Alchemist called Fashionably Late, which I think that was like an EP. I can't remember. I don't think that project was that long, but he dropped that, and now we get, I can't remember if he dropped anything after that. But even still, he's been putting out more content as of late, which is always a good thing. If you don't know who Fashawn is, as I stated, Boy Meets World is probably like his most notable release. He's an MC from the West Coast. He's done tracks with people like Dom Kennedy. I actually think he had a track with Busta Rhymes on the Ecology. Either way, man, he's been in the game for a while. He's been holding it down on the West Coast. Definitely a good MC. So I'm always looking forward to his projects. I guess I'll run through this really quick because this album honestly is not that long. So I'll just go through some of the tracks I like. I guess overall, as an overall note, just real quick. Like I said, it's a really quick to the point EP. Lots of social commentary throughout this project. Lots of thoughts on, racism and kind of the state of the country right now. And I thought he did a good job of kind of fitting all of that into this really short project. And definitely some lines in here that I pulled away. But just to go into some tracks I enjoyed. The opening track, Manna, I guess which means Moses. Really good start to the EP. I love the little guitar lead that starts off and that beat drops. I think it was produced by somebody named Hectic, if I remember correctly. So shout out to him because the beat was just so mean when it dropped. And then Fashawn just goes in, and yeah, man, he just goes in, man. It was a really, really good start to the project. Another favorite track on here, Crack America. It's really slow plodding beat with these almost like tribal drums. It kind of reminded me of, and this track is kind of Fashawn just assessing America and just looking out at the world and not really enjoying what he's seeing. I like the line, so much irrational behavior, we cut throats casually, spiritual depravity, money is your new majesty, I'm in search of a new habitat for humanity. So I thought that was a really good line. And like I said, it's kind of a track of just him, I guess, assessing society's ills at large. Very, very, socially, I don't want to say powerful, but just socially, I guess, aware track. I love the track Proud on here. Kind of, I guess you could say, like his Black Power anthem on here. A lot of references to prominent blacks throughout history. And I love the horns on the production. So I don't know who did this beat, but shout outs to you. The beat on this track was really, really dope. And like I said, he just references a lot of black figures and their contributions. People like Marcus Garvey, Angela Davis, Nat Turner, Carter G. Woodson, Miriam Makeba, so on and so forth. A bunch of people I'm probably forgetting, but really, really, really dope track of just, about being proud to be black, pretty much, even in face of racism and things the things that we go through in this country, that he's still proud of his people, he's still proud of his heritage. So that was definitely one of my favorite tracks on here. I love the track that's entitled Fashawn. I love that hook, man. That hook to this track is just so catchy, and the beat on that track is it's awesome. That's probably, I don't know if it's my favorite. It's like top 2, though, man. That's another track on here that's just really, really, really dope, man. And then I guess I'll just mention the is this the last track? Yeah, Mother Amerikkka. So I think this is the track that I kind of skipped through a few songs, but that's the track that closes out the album. Actually, real quick. Actually, you know what? Before I get to the last track, the middle part of this EP, it takes a quick turn. So tracks 1 through 4 are pretty, I guess you would say, serious. So Manna, Crack Amerikkka. There's also another track called Afraid, which is pretty dope. I love the sample vocals on that one. But those tracks are pretty serious, along with Proud, which is track number 4, of talking about social injustices and things like that. and then takes a quick turn on tracks 5 and 6. So 5, you get Pardon My G with Snoop Dogg, which is this really kind of like upbeat party track, and then you get Celebration, which is kind of sort of the same. Those tracks did kind of throw me off when I first heard the EP, just because it kind of felt like it didn't, I guess, fit with everything else that was going on in the EP. But I guess on the same token, I don't say it breaks up monotony. So I don't want to make it sound like the rest of the EP was like bad or boring or anything, but I guess it just gives you a different look real quick, so that maybe the album just isn't so heavy. You can get a few lighter moments to listen to. So I guess it depends on your mood. Like, I guess if you like those kind of tracks, you might find them enjoyable. Pardon My G for me was kind of Celebration was cool, and then you got Clouds Above, and like I said, then you got the track entitled Fashawn, which is awesome. And then closing track number 9 is Mother Amerikkka, and this is pretty much the track of him talking about racism and police brutality and things like that. But there were some lines in this song, man, that really stood out. No justice for Alton Sterling or Betty Jones, Miguel Espinal, Nathaniel Pickett, Philando. That's the taste of a bland decision. Ambulances, family panic-stricken, lie in the casket or you could land in prison. The ultimatum still stands in the land we live in. Bro, that bland decision line really stuck out to me. When I first heard that, I was like, ooh, like, that was mean. It's a sad bar when you think about it, but like it was mean how he fit that in there. And if you don't know the Sandra Bland story, I don't get into it, but if you know, you know. Like that was a pretty mean line. So that line really stood out, and I think throughout this song he did a kind of a good job of really painting an image of how black people are treated in this country, and how we do, and we love being here. We love the country, but it doesn't seem like it really loves us back. Actually, this song reminds me a lot of that Why You Don't Love Me track from Joey Badass's album. Like, they don't sound the same, but I feel like the content is very like similar, and they express a lot of the same sentiment. So yeah, that was a dope line. But another favorite line, it's pretty much the ending line. Actually, these are the last couple bars on the entire album, where he says, "In debt we confess, we owe each other a lot. Still I hug her like she the only mother I got. Even though she threw shade on the sunniest spots, turned every one of her sons into something they not. I've been insane since I came out of stomach. I don't know how else to say it. I'm in love with Mother Amerikkka," which is him painting this picture of America as his mother figure, who basically treats him like trash, but he still loves her, even though he knows, that she's not doing right by him, and that she's messing up him, she's messing up his friends, but he's still trying to hang in there, which I feel like that's very, very relevant considering a lot of the crazy things that we got going on in this country right now. But I thought that was just a really powerful way to end the album, or EP, I should say. But yeah, man, this EP is really dope, man. Like I said, in 9 tracks, you get a lot of social and political commentary and things like that, but you still get music that sounds good, a lot like the Marlon Craft project. It's not preachy, and Fashawn is also just a really dope MC. So yeah, man, this EP it came together really well, man. In 9 tracks, you get some really solid material. So I was really pleased with what I heard, man, and I hope after this EP, maybe we can get another Fashawn album. Definitely would be looking forward to that. So hopefully he's got something in the works, man. But as far as the Manna EP, definitely give this a listen, man. If you're a Fashawn fan, I think you'd enjoy this. If you've never listened to Fashawn, this probably wouldn't actually be too bad of a start. I would say though, and I think in comparison to some of his other works, this one's probably one of the more socially and like politically charged. Not that he doesn't talk about issues in his in other projects, but like this one seems really heavily focused on that. So I mean, if you like that kind of commentary, then you'll probably enjoy this project a lot. But if you want to hear him more on just, I hate to say like regular songs, but songs that, if you want to hear a more varied style of what he can do, I would say maybe listen to Boy Meets World or The Ecology, to where it's not all social and political talk. It's some of that kind of mixed in with like reality rap, but then him also making can make like catchier songs. Like I love Golden State of Mind off The Ecology. I think that's a really cool track from him, with him and Dom Kennedy, that kind of shows that he can break away from kind of like that serious rap, that he can do something a bit catchy without it being like corny or anything like that. So yeah, man, Fashawn's a really, really good MC, dope artist. So give this a look, man. It's a dope project. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I got for today. I ain't trying to keep you guys here for forever and ever, hours on end. So yeah, just a quick recap, man. Death Note. Yeah. Do with it what you will. Marlon Craft, The Tunnel's End. Definitely give that album a look, man. Dude's been out here putting in work. Seems to be getting better with every project, and that album definitely shows it. So give that a look. And this Fashawn-Mother EP, definitely give that a listen. Only 9 tracks, so you can get through this pretty fast without it taking up too much of your time. So yeah, man, good music, good content, good times, man, good times. So real quick before I leave, sorry, I keep burping. I ate right before I recorded this. Probably wasn't a good idea, but yeah, real quick before I bounce up out of here, as I stated earlier, by the time you guys hear this episode, if you're a fight fan, like I said, we went over the Stefan Struve and Alexander Volkov fight, so that podcast will be dropping soon. I'm also gonna be reviewing this Samurai Shin project. If you guys aren't aware, that's like an indie manga, but it also is accompanied with 2 EPs that are like instrumentals, or there's some rapping on there too. Either way, it's a real interesting rollout. I love the concept of like that project as a whole. So don't know what I'm getting into when I read the manga. I mean, I kind of have an idea, but you never really know what you're getting until you read it. So definitely I'm gonna check that out, and I'll definitely be talking about that. That'll actually probably be my next review, so you can be on the lookout for that. And we got UFC 215 coming up. Definitely got some other albums, man. I got to listen to this Daniel Caesar album that I've been hearing about. I don't know, man. I got some projects. I got things in the works, and there's a lot of content out there to be talked about and reviewed. So I'll be on it, man. I'll try to keep myself busy so I can keep putting out content. All I ask from you guys is, if you're listening, give me a like, give me a share. That's what I want the most, man. Just if you do anything, if you don't like, just give me a share, man. Like I just want to spread this to people. I want to get a bigger audience. I'm on YouTube, I'm on SoundCloud, I'm on Google Play. I'm trying to get on iTunes, but hey, they're jerking me. But I'm trying to just spread the audience, man. So if you like hip hop, if you like mixed martial arts, you like movies, you like anime, nerd culture, I guess you could say, in general, pass this around to somebody. They might find something they like. So I'd appreciate it if you can just give me a share, give me a like, spread it to as many people as you possibly can who think might appreciate it. And don't be afraid to comment, man. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on the projects I review, the fights that we talk about, and things like that. So always looking forward to the interaction I can get. And if you want, you can follow me on Twitter at Serial Sensei, and you can like the Dojo Talk Facebook podcast page. And yeah, man. So I will leave all relevant links in the description below, so you can follow me on social media where I'm at and keep up with all the work and content that I'm putting out. And yeah, so it's pretty much all I got for today. It's been a good time. Hope you guys check out all of the music I've recommended, and maybe check out Death Note. That's whatever. But yeah, man, it's been real. But I'm gonna go get out here and enjoy my 2 days off before I gotta go back and work for the man on Tuesday. So yeah, I'm gonna go kick my feet up. Probably listen to a few podcasts myself. Oh, actually, real quick before I get out of here, cause I'm actually meant to mention this a couple podcasts ago. Shout outs to D-Respect and Dominic Rebron. Or Rebron. If I'm saying that, probably butchering your name as much as I listen to that podcast. But yeah, man, those guys had a podcast called Double D's. I'm not gonna lie, it's probably like my favorite podcast of all time. Recently, within like the last month, that podcast came to an end, unfortunately. They stopped at episode 200. And then they put out a documentary, which I'm too broke to buy right now, like literally too broke to buy, but I definitely want to check that out. One of the most entertaining podcasts I think I've ever listened to. If you, it's nothing like you've heard before, man. Those guys are really talented. It was really sad to see that podcast go because they had such good chemistry. The characters that they had on that podcast, man, Underwater Eddie and Julio and Directions guy. Like it's hard to explain if you've never listened to it, but for people, if you've heard of the Double D's podcast, you know, man, that was a really epic podcast, and 200 episodes of great entertainment covering everything from hip hop to politics to like relationships and life advice. Just it was a really, really awesome podcast. To be honest, it was one of the podcasts I listened to that made me want to do my own podcast, because I really, really enjoyed what those guys did. It was sad to see them end at 200, but you know, they both got their own ventures and things that they're trying to do outside of, I guess, podcasting. So I'm pretty sure they both have bright futures ahead of them. But yeah, man, give those guys a look, man. Like and albeit by the time you listen to that podcast, a lot of that content will be old, but still, man, they have a podcast that's just worth going back and listening to, because it's really unique and just entertaining, and it definitely stands apart from other podcasts that I've listened to, even mine. So, like, yeah, man, shout outs to D-Respect and Dominic Rebron, who still have their own individual channels. If you guys want to check them out, D-Respect channel, good to check out if you want some good hip-hop commentary. He has a really good, unique perspective on things. I like how he doesn't really do like album reviews, but I don't know, the angle that he takes when he dissects music, I think is always interesting, because he seems always tied to like this bigger picture. And Dominic Rebron is good to follow if you're into art, if you're into like design. He's a really good artist. He does live sketches on his channel. Also dabbles into, you know, music and things like that. So two dudes who I definitely respect in the podcast game and this creative world. So yeah, man, shout outs to those guys. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I meant to mention that a while ago, but yeah, man, long live the Double D's podcast. Great podcast that I would recommend anybody to listen to, man. It's a really entertaining podcast. But yeah, man, that's all I got for today. It is your host, Serial Sensei. It's been a good time with you guys, but I'm going to go enjoy my day. So hope you guys do the same, and I will catch y'all later. Peace.